Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. DC released another new version of the Superman trailer, a second version with more footage that wasn't in that first one. There's a ton more new hidden characters, cameo scenes. James Gunn talked about the new Batman of the DCU that's going to cross over with Superman eventually, and whether or not they were just going to use Robert Pattinson's version for that. Most people have just been asking that, like, why don't you just make Robert Pattinson the DCU Batman? Just say that he's part of the DCU at some point. There's also a couple secret characters that he said are in the movie that they haven't announced yet publicly and aren't in the trailer, so if you do look, you won't find them in the trailer. But I think we have figured out who he's talking about just based on the upcoming release schedule the next couple years. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. There's a bunch of big stuff coming up, and we'll be getting more Superman footage pretty soon, so of course I will do all the videos for that, whatever they wind up releasing. There's already been a ton more clips just leaking out from all kinds of different sources. They're just dropping them all over the place. Based on the footage that we have seen so far, it does look like David Corenswet will be able to nail Clark Kent. We will see more of him as Superman. So, there's not a ton of actual Superman footage of him in this trailer. I think we get a much better sense of his actual Clark Kent character, though. The big Yamcha joke that everyone was making, it was all over the trailer video that I posted. I'm sure it's all over everybody else's videos too. If you have not watched Dragon Ball Z, it's like probably one of the most popular anime series in the entire world. But this goes way back, so like it's a super big deep cut. During the Saiyan saga of that series, he was killed when Raditz and Vegeta came to Earth and fought the Z Fighters. The comp that people are making is that Superman at the beginning of the trailer in this crater here looks exactly like him when he was killed. Obviously, the difference here is that David Corenswet's Superman isn't dead yet. But since the trailer has come out, there's actually been some really good fan art making much more literal comparisons, like this is him drawn in the style of Dragon Ball Z if he had been in that actual show. My guess is that this is probably during his fight with Ultraman in the movie, like the evil version of himself, the Bizarro version. Don't worry, I'll talk about him in a second. There aren't a lot of characters that could actually do this much damage to him, even like the giant kaiju couldn't hurt him this much. Because here he looks like he's wheezing, spitting his own blood on the edge of death. But if you went to a movie theater yesterday, you probably saw the second version of the trailer. There's like an alternate version that's just playing in theaters. I saw it playing in front of Sonic 3. I don't know why they're showing a totally different version of the trailer in theaters than the one they released online, but whatever, I will watch 10 different versions of the trailer if they want to release 10 different versions with new footage. Major difference with this theatrical version, there's a much more loaded Lex Luthor scene with one major character in the movie that was almost hidden in the original trailer, like you just get a much better shot of them. This scene is also probably going to be memed to death because it looks like Lex Luthor is walking into a club getting ready to get busy. But if you look at the massive doors behind him, notice he's inside the Fortress of Solitude. So in the movie at some point, Lex Luthor presumably breaks into the fortress, probably while Superman is being kept busy with some other disaster on the other side of the planet, or Lex Luthor temporarily wounds him enough so that he can't stop him from entering the fortress. Maybe it has something to do with the scene of him cradling Kellex outside the fortress like he's been ripped to pieces by Ultraman. But notice in this Lex Luthor scene, next to him is that person in black they're calling Ultraman in the movie. I believe that's just what the movie is going to call him. He's not meant to be Earth 3 Ultraman, who in the comics is just a multiverse version of Superman from an Earth where the Justice League characters are all evil. We actually just saw that version during the Crisis on Infinite Earths movie. Most people are referring to this version as more of a Bizarro take on Superman based on the original comic book Origin of Bizarro, where he's just a clone of Superman created by Lex Luthor. This is probably why his whole body is covered head to toe, so that nobody will see that he's actually cloned Superman and just using him as his own personal attack dog. He's supposed to be one of the hardest, if not the hardest boss for Superman to physically fight in the movie. Lex Luthor is meant to be the actual main villain though, just controlling Ultraman here. Next to them, she's kind of cut off a frame, but you can see that it's her, is the Engineer from the Authority comics. She'll also be one of the sub-bosses working for Lex Luthor in the movie, it looks like. Originally, I think she was meant to be part of the setup for a live-action Authority movie at some point down the road. Now the report is that they might wind up making that Authority movie an animated film.
The Authority are a group of superheroes who think the world is broken and they want to fix it by any means necessary. I think it's a very different look at superheroes.
If you haven't read the Authority comics, they're kind of like the Boys or like the Watchmen in that they were created separately from the main DC universe, but they're a spin on a lot of classic tropes from Justice League DC characters. They're a way wilder take in terms of what the characters are actually like a much more cynical group of characters in the whole superhero universe of the DC universe. It sounds like what James Gunn was planning to do at some point is just use them to juxtapose or serve as sort of like the balancing act against Superman's inherent goodness, like his desire to be truth and justice of the DC universe. Imagine the way The Boys treats that kind of idea inside the Boys universe. But it seems like in the Superman movie here, the Engineer is going to be more of a sub-boss antagonist working for Lex Luthor and Luthor Corp. Because in this other scene from the original trailer online, some of you may have spotted this, if you zoom and enhance like 1,000,000,000%, you can see her walking along the exterior of the Luthor Corp building in the middle of the day. My assumption is that Lex Luthor brought these two people specifically with him to break into the Fortress of Solitude because, one, Ultraman would have the same DNA as Superman, and the Fortress of Solitude is basically coded to his DNA, so it'd be like bringing a giant key to unlock all of its systems. The Fortress is basically a repository of all Kryptonian knowledge, science, technology. It'd be this treasure trove for Lex Luthor to try and pilfer. Really good example of how this bears out is notice Mr. Terrific is saving this person with his T-spheres in the force field here. The people firing on him look like they're wearing purple and green suits, which might be prototypes for Lex Luthor's war suit from the comics. Like he might just make an upgraded version of this, and it might be based on Kryptonian tech that he steals from the Fortress. Easiest way for him to find a way to actually kill Superman, to defeat Superman, would be to use his own technology against him. The Engineer is important to him because of her key abilities. Being a technopath, she can speak to and control any forms of technology, probably also Kryptonian technology. In the way that James Gunn said he was differentiating this new Lex Luthor, the Nicholas Hoult version from previous versions, is that this new version would be more like a sorcerer inside the DC universe in terms of his ability, his level of science and technology. It would make him seem like a sorcerer. So of course it would make sense for him to use someone like the Engineer and try to get his hands on every piece of Kryptonian science and technology. Ultraman, though, is more like the attack dog in the key that just unlocks the front door and allows him to get in and turn all the systems on. Usually when Superman isn't around, the Fortress essentially goes into lockdown power save mode, like a computer in sleep mode, unless he tells the Fortress to do something specific when he's not around. One of the other funny takes that the comics have done before is that oftentimes Superman will also leave the Fortress unlocked. Like, even though it's called Fortress, the front door is open for anybody to actually enter if you can actually use the key, which is massive. Like, it's one of the heaviest metals on Earth. So the idea is that anybody can enter if you are strong enough to actually just physically open the door. That would also be one of the big reasons why Lex Luthor would need to bring Ultraman to be able to do that. But in the new footage, we also get a little more of a preview of the Fortress interior, and the design looks a little bit like it's meant to be an Easter egg for the Christopher Reeve Superman movie. I'm sure there are a bunch more Easter eggs for that just baked into the design, just the whole vibes of the movie in general. David Corenswet's performance as Clark Kent and Superman across the trailer feels very coded for the Christopher Reeve version anyway. But if you look in the background, zoom and enhance, notice the pillars in the Fortress inside when he's cradling Kelex's body here. This scene is happening at the Fortress. Maybe Ultraman or the Engineers destroyed Kelex. These pillars look just like the design of Jor-El's lab during the Christopher Reeve movie, so it just feels like they're going to be borrowing a lot from that Christopher Reeve movie. A lot of you will also remember Lex breaking into the Fortress of Solitude to steal Kryptonian technology and science was a big plot point from the Christopher Reeve Superman movies that later got repeated during the Brandon Routh Superman Returns movie, which was also canonically meant to be Christopher Reeve's version. So it's like Lex Luthor ultimately broke into the Fortress multiple times. When it comes to the new Batman of the DCU that's going to be crossing over with everyone, be part of the new version of the Justice League, a lot of you asked this question right after James Gunn said he was rebooting everything and announced that new Batman Brave and the Bold movie with Damian Wayne in the Bat family. Pretty much everybody was like, wait a minute, we have this Robert Pattinson Batman movie coming out. It seems like everybody's pretty hyped about that. Why don't they just eventually say that Robert Pattinson is the DCU Batman? And reportedly, James Gunn does want it to be Robert Pattinson's version, and Robert Pattinson himself also wants to be in the DCU, crossing over with everyone.
I've contemplated it. Yeah, we've contemplated it. But I'm committed to both telling stories in the DCU and telling Elseworld's story. I want to tell a story in which, Superman's very different, or, tell a, Red Sun story or whatever,
The holdup, though, the reason why they haven't just come out and said that they're going to do that is Matt Reeves himself. Apparently, just Matt Reeves is the person that's trying to buck this. That's what James Gunn means when he says during that clip that he's open to telling Elseworld stories outside the DCU, and he doesn't want to force Matt Reeves to make Robert Pattinson cross over with everyone right now. Notice I said right now though, like ... just for now. Supposedly behind the scenes, James Gunn has been trying to convince Matt Reeves of the idea, but Matt Reeves is still resisting crossing over Batman with the DCU stuff. What's probably going to happen with that is that they'll wait till after the Batman 2 comes out in 2026 and they'll announce the way they're going to go. Like, yes or no, will it be Robert Pattinson or will they cast a totally new Batman for Batman Brave and the Bold? Let me know in the comments though, would you rather they just say that Robert Pattinson is going to eventually be the Justice League Batman, or do you want them to cast a totally new one? Just feels like they want to avoid a lot of market confusion, cannibalizing their brand with like tons of different Batman running around all over the place. One of the big reasons why they canceled Superman and Lois early, they were originally going to give it more seasons, but they said that they didn't want to create market confusion with a bunch of different versions of Superman on screen when David Corenswet was about to premiere in the Superman movie. Like, they only wanted one real big Superman to follow. So it makes sense that they kind of want to do the same thing for Batman. But if Matt Reeves' movies are doing well, making a ton of money, it just makes sense to make Robert Pattinson that Justice League Batman at some point. As for that secret character that James Gunn said is in the Superman movie, but they haven't publicly announced yet and is like a really critical character for the future of DC, I personally think that he's talking about Millie Alcock's Supergirl. Just because the next movie that James Gunn said that they're releasing as part of the DCU after Superman will be the Supergirl movie, so it makes sense that she'd have some small cameo in the Superman movie to help set that up. I'm guessing they will probably not put her in any of the trailers, though, if she is in the movie. Like, they'll just wait till the movie comes out and let you see her there. Maybe we'll see some costume stuff leak out because they're going to be releasing the movie the year after Superman comes out, meaning they'll be shooting the movie as we're watching the Superman movie, so we'll probably get some looks at what's going on during that film. Speaking of Supergirl, big crossover character too, the story that they're adapting for that movie is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is a spin on Superman Man of Tomorrow. But it takes place on the other side of the universe, like it's a space-based movie. Krypto, the superdog, appears in that comic book story. I don't know if he's going to be in the movie, but James Gunn did talk a lot about Krypto's arc during the Superman movie. In the movie, his story is meant to be based on James Gunn's real-life dog that he rescued while he was making the Superman movie. The way he explained the arc is that like a lot of rescue dogs, like rescue pets, was completely wild when he first adopted him, so Krypto will be a little bit like that during the events of the movie. Like, he's not meant to start the movie being the world's best doggo. Very, very misbehaved, often doesn't listen to Superman, because he has superpowers, also just tears the hell out of everything. Like, you've ever caught your pets chewing on stuff, destroying stuff around your house? Imagine if they had superpowers and they were doing the same thing. Just a complete disaster tornado. James Gunn said that he had to work really hard over a long period of time in real life just to slowly get his dog used to being around other people, learning to chill out, just because it had been so traumatized in the way that it had been raised when he rescued it. And in the movie, that's meant to be kind of Krypto's backstory. Like, he has this very traumatic backstory, and Superman kind of does the same thing with Krypto over a long period of time. It's just that it started before the events of the Superman movie pick up. Like, he adopted Krypto before the Superman movie starts. If you haven't read the comics or seen any other live-action versions of Krypto, his backstory has changed a lot over the years in the comics and the stories. The main story, though, is that he also came from Krypton in his own pod, and that's where his powers come from. Basically the same situation as Superman, like his Kryptonian cells are irradiated by Earth's yellow sun and give him all of his powers. Originally, he was meant to be a beta test of Jor-El when he was trying to create Superman's pod and Krypto's pod, like the Russians fired a dog into space before they did a lot of human trials. Krypto's pod went off course, got lost, but eventually made its way to Earth the same way that Superman's pod did, and that's when Superman found him and adopted him. So it sounds like that's going to be his backstory in this new movie. There've been a ton of other takes on Krypto in the movies and the TV shows, like they just did a Super Pets movie. The Titans version was meant to be a beta animal test for Connor Kent's Superboy, like they imply Cadmus Labs used Superman's cells to create a hybrid Kryptonian dog before trying out a human hybrid clone. Smallville's version wasn't Krypto, his name was Shelby, and he was just like a regular Earth dog, experimented on and given powers by the meteor shower like most of the characters on that show. There's also a little bit of Smallville baked into the movie too, like some of the inspirations for the movie were taken from the Smallville TV show. One of them being actual Luthor Corp. So a lot of people were asking about this. Why isn't Lex Luthor's company called LexCorp? That's what it is in the comics. On Smallville, though, Lionel Luthor, Lex's father, ran Luthor Corp. Then eventually at some point, Lex creates his own company and calls it Lex Corp, but then comes to eventually take over his father's company and just winds up running Luthor Corp. So Luthor Corp was a creation of Smallville. We will see if Nicholas Hoult gives Michael Rosenbaum a run for his money as the best version of Lex, but previously, before he made the Superman movie, James Gunn did say, this is early on before Nicholas Hoult became Lex Luthor, that Michael Rosenbaum was the best version of Lex. We'll probably get a bunch more footage of him in the next real big Superman trailer. But there's a whole bunch of stuff going on during all this footage, and I'm sure we're going to get more pretty soon too. If there's anything you spotted or I didn't talk about in this video that you have questions about, just write it below in the comments and I'll try to address it. Everybody click here for my other big trailer video with all that other footage, and click here for the new Creature Commandos episode with a whole bunch of crossovers and cameos from David Corenswet Superman and all the other brand new DCU Justice League characters. Remember, all that stuff is meant to be canon to the new live-action movies. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.